This week, after the assassination attempt on Donald Trump, the panel discusses the media's role in the national tone. California Governor Gavin Newsom signs legislation driving a legal wedge between public school students and their parents. And one business owner's sweet incentive to kids learning the Pledge of Allegiance. These stories and plenty more on deck this week on The Lion Week in Review. Welcome into this week's edition of The Lion Week in Review. It's a weekly look at the culture, the courts, your state capitol, and your kids. I'm Chris Stegall. And now let's meet our panel. Some of the men and women behind the stories at readlion.com. Josh Mann is our managing editor. Michael Ryan, executive editor. And new to the show, Valerie Cabana, media contributor here at The Lion. Panel, welcome to all of you today. We get started with what is obviously the biggest news story of the whole week, and really probably this calendar year, and maybe in recent history, and that's the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. Michael, you wrote an op-ed on this subject and how we got to this place. Pretty important.
I did. I call it Rhetoric for Radicals. You know, the question here is, did this would-be assassin get caught up in a climate of political hatred? We just don't know at this point. But we know that the climate of political hatred is real, right? And I can tell you from personal experience that brainwashing is real. I told a story in the column that I wrote about a former colleague at a newspaper who, when a certain political candidate on the right came up, she said, "Oh, I hate her." And I said, "Really, why?" And she said, and she just didn't know. I don't know. I mean, that to me, that's the effect of brainwashing. And in the case of the president, the former President Trump, you had a situation where all of this rhetoric was coming from the left, especially his political rivals. And then you had the New Republic left-wing magazine with a cover that morphed Trump's visage into Hitler, which was very disturbing and seemingly uncalled for. But the rivals keep saying that he's a threat to democracy. I'm not sure anybody on the street could tell you exactly how he is.
Do people know what Hitler did?
You would hope so.
We're comparing that?
Yeah.
Valerie, you are you're on social media all day long as part of your job, so you see a lot of this vitriol. Where do you think it comes from?
You know, I think that we are looking at the media right now, and it is just fueling hate. It's fueling hate, and it's even to say, hey, all of this hate, is it accurate? Are we actually looking at facts that are being displayed? And could that have led to the assassination attempt?
Josh Mann, the media role in this, I mean, you also in media for a long time. I mean, is this one of these inward-looking stories where we all have to kind of analyze ourselves?
I do think so. I mean, in the column that Michael wrote, William Barr there talked about how character assassination was likely to lead to real assassination. And so I think the media does bear some responsibility here. And, you know, I was reminded by a friend of a proverb this week that I think might apply to these kinds of situations. And it says, "Whoever conceals hatred with lying lips and spreads slander is a fool." And I think, you know, it's common in politics to slander political opponents, but there certainly this threat of democracy language seems to be a step too far. And I think the column also makes a good point. Who actually is the threat to democracy? Who is actually the one who is a bigger threat? And right now we see we see a really divided country, and we see some pretty strong rhetoric on both sides. But clearly, when something like what happened Saturday takes place, and when you look at the reaction on social media, even of some celebrating the fact and wishing that actually it had been a successful assassination.
Let me ask the group.
Really sad.
Yeah, I'll ask the group. Michael, how optimistic are you that rhetoric cools at least the rest of this political cycle?
I would say probably not at all, because I don't see the other side toning it down at all. They're still throwing out danger to democracy, and as you say, Josh, there's so many people online that were pulling for the shooter. I mean, it's just despicable.
Valerie, how optimistic are you things cool off a little bit?
I like to remain optimistic. I would like to say that it is going to. I think it has given President Joe Biden the opportunity to say, hey, we're not going to tolerate this. It's just, are the American people going to listen?
Josh Mann, optimistic?
Yeah, I'm not so sure. I think the jury's out. I think we have seen a change, actually. I think, but right now the left is not sure it wants Joe Biden in office, so they also have now these kind of mixed incentives on how much they want to support the other guy. So we'll see.
Very interesting this week that they talk about maybe the RNC and the tone of even Trump's speech is going to be entirely different now. So we will see. Let's turn to St. Joe. You know, this is a city not terribly far from where we do this show, the St. Joseph School District in what is effectively northwest Missouri. Josh, you guys at the Lion have been covering the St. Joe School District for a while now, and they've had a lot of troubles, and now it's gotten the attention of Jefferson City. Yeah,
that's right. The Lion reported on a number of issues in this district this year, including illegal electioneering. So there was evidence that actually they used district resources to support this ballot initiative, which was successful. I mean, it passed. And there were also conflicts of interest we reported about. There was a school board member who harassed another member. She was charged, pled guilty to those charges. We reported on that. And now the Missouri AG has announced he's investigating this district. And when you look at what the AG said, it just clearly the Lion had a huge impact in reporting and unearthing some of these things. And the evidence that the AG is now seeking relies, it seems, not only on some of our investigation, but he's seeking some more evidence.
That's amazing.
In case.
Michael, I don't know the rules. I'm sure every school district governs itself differently, but is the community interested in cleaning this up themselves? Special elections, recalls? What do we know about that?
Well, I think definitely they're interested in it. The question is, what drives that journey of accountability? And having been in the newspaper business for years, I can tell you, it used to be newspapers that would hold local officials accountable. And that has waned a lot in the last few decades with the decline in newspapering. And there's a decline, too, I think, in local newspapers holding local people accountable for what they do. There's been, I think, at the same time, a parallel very alarming rise in imperiousness in local officials, kind of mimicking what they see at the national level. But they look around, they see that it doesn't really matter what the newspaper or news organization locally may say about you. I've noticed that in the last few decades, public officials who don't care about that accountability, they don't even return your phone calls. So the question is, who's going to hold these people accountable? And it may be the Attorney General in your state.
Well, for the folks in St. Joe School District, they've got the Lion. I guess they have readline.com to thank for at least cracking the door open on this thing and shedding some light. We turn, Valerie, to a story about school closures in the United States, something that is really becoming an issue. Public schools closing because enrollment is naturally declining. What's the cause?
Yeah, so let's just start at education should be about the student 100% of the time. If it gets to the point to where we're no longer putting the students first and you're looking at it from that perspective, look in the mirror, you might actually be the problem. But education is evolving. You need to get on the train or you're going to get left behind. There are so many options now. You've got homeschools, you've got public charter schools, you've got Christian schools, non-religious private schools, so many different options that parents can choose from. And that should live in the parents' authority. They have been anointed by God to parent their children.
So, Josh, is this one of those things that some who have opposed school choice, is this evidence of, see, you're trying to erode our public schools?
No, I mean, I think there's a few issues. There's a few things at play. One is there is a baby bust right now. We've got shrinking demographics. There are just less kids to educate. That's one thing. But there's also been a loss of trust in public education, so parents don't trust the local public school districts like they used to, so they're pulling their kids out. And at the same time, we've got these booming alternatives, private education, Christian schools, homeschooling. And so there are more and better options. We see school choice in many states growing. And so it's kind of a perfect storm in a certain sense, but it's a really great storm because it's dry and we need the rain.
And Michael Ryan, I think it's a great foray into a story you've also written at reliant.com. You know, if school enrollment is declining, look to California as one of the big reasons why.
Yeah, I wrote a story about the fact that Californians are revolting and absolutely savaging Governor Gavin Newsom online for signing a law Monday that actually bars mandated parental notification of gender changes in schools. And some of the things they're saying online, Gavin and child groomers both celebrating. State-sponsored groomers, protect your kids, leave the state. And if you have kids, flee.
Which, by the way, Elon Musk is doing, was also reported this week, right, Michael?
Yes. He said basically that was the straw that broke the camel's back, that particular law. And he's moving SpaceX and Tesla to Texas.
Valerie, what do, as the resident woman on the show, what do women feel about the notion of a school and a school staff having the authority to keep secrets between them and your kids, or that would be, if you had kids, your own children?
Yeah, so I am always thinking about what it's going to look like once I do have kids. I look forward to that. But as I mentioned, parents are anointed by God. Does that mean that every parent is a good parent? No, it doesn't. But the majority of parents are going to be the best love that a child can receive. No one can love a child like their parent can. And if you don't give them their God-given right to parent, then what are we doing?
And Josh, isn't this sort of evidence? The school choice argument has always been, look, parents know best. This literally flies in the face of that. This says parents do not know best, the school does instead.
It's absolutely unbelievable. As a parent, you know, we've had Supreme Court cases actually that have upheld the right of a parent to raise their child in the way they see fit. It just is unimaginable that a state could actually be going this direction this far in the current environment, when you're seeing parents across the nation rise up and say, look, we need our rights respected. They're our children. They don't belong to the state. And I mean, think back to when you were a kid. How many decisions did you make that you look back and you regret? You were immature. You know, we all go through this time of growth and maturation, and now we're saying, no, actually, I think we think the kids know best, and we need to keep the parents in the dark. That's foolish.
Absolutely.
My wife would argue that I'm still going through a state of maturation as we speak, but that's another story. Valerie, a happy story this week. Ice cream and patriotism. It doesn't get better than that.
No, it does not. And it is super exciting that this business in Savannah, Georgia is encouraging kids to learn the Pledge of Allegiance. I mean, I know I actually said the Pledge of Allegiance every morning in elementary school growing up, as it should be. Students should know the Pledge of Allegiance.
Is that, Josh, uncommon, or is that changing? What do you know about that? Is the Pledge of Allegiance on the way out of public schools these days?
Well, it's certainly become controversial for some strange reason. I mean, we kind of know why. We had, we saw this in the NFL with Colin Kaepernick and some others after the George Floyd protests, and there began to be this narrative that perhaps it's somehow racist to be patriotic. Which I don't believe is true at all. And so all of a sudden there began to be a little bit of maybe embarrassment or shame around patriotism. But the best of America is actually, not only is it not racist, but it's this idea that anyone, regardless of who they are, their skin color, where they come from, can live a life. They have all of the freedoms protected by the Constitution. And when we pledge allegiance to the flag, I mean, that is what it represents. And so, what a great idea. Let's give kids the chance to recite it, to memorize it, recite it, and give them some ice cream. It seems like a great idea.
This is kind of a close cousin to another story you wrote, Michael Ryan. Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri. This is a guy who has regularly been targeted for the things he says. The story you wrote kind of reminds me of the Harrison Butker kerfuffle of a few weeks ago.
Yep.
What's going on there?
The left, really going into this election year, as far as I could tell, was planning on making Christian nationalism equate National Socialism. I mean, Christian nationalism was something they wanted to make a big issue in this campaign. And obviously the president's fitness for office intervened in that effort. But a Kansas City Star columnist basically tried to Butker Josh Hawley after he gave a speech to a conservative conference, touting what Christianity has done to make America great. And it was really, the column was really dripping with condescension, basically saying, the headline was, "So Josh Hawley advocates Christian nationalism. Does he really know what that means?" Well, maybe, since he was giving the keynote speech, and he's given a lot of thought to it. But then again, we have a secular, self-obsessed, godless culture, and it's going so well, with the crime and the despair and the division and the cities decaying. Heaven forbid we try something as untested as God, right?
Valerie, I'm curious to know how the Harrison Butker speech of weeks ago landed on your ears and this notion of a male theocracy. Do you like hearing public figures, athletes and politicians who are men, talk about the importance of men in the family and leadership, or does that offend you as a woman?
So I love this question. I love what Harrison Butker said, and I know that that's controversial. My husband is not my savior, but he is my leader. And as a Christian, I'm going to accept that. It's a good thing, but I'm not suppressed. I have every freedom that any other woman has. It's just, as Christians, that's how we structure our family, and my values shouldn't offend you.
All right, send all of your emails to Valerie Cabana here at The Lion. Look, before we get going today, I always like to ask this panel your favorite article of the week. We start with Michael Ryan. What do you like over there this week at readline.com, Michael?
Well, we just put up a story about the fact that a federal injunction emanating from Kansas blocking Joe Biden's Title IX rewrite to mandate boys and girls sports. That injunction has been expanded beyond just 4 states to include 429 individual schools in 44 states and 687 colleges and universities. And that's because anybody who's a member of certain organizations that were involved in that lawsuit, they could say, we don't want this being the case in our school.
Josh Mann?
Well, we have an article coming out in The Lion about private schools and security, cybersecurity. And so actually private schools are a big target for cyber hacking. And so I think it's good to shine some light on that and let private schools know what they can do to better protect themselves.
Valerie, your favorite story of the week?
So it's going to be rhetoric for radicals. Michael's column. I mean, this is so important that we are highlighting the hatred that's happening in our country. This cannot be tolerated. There is no space for it. And if people continue to stay quiet and they don't stand up for what they believe, then it's going to continue happening. So I'm so glad that we're bringing awareness to such a critical topic.
Thank you, Valerie. Welcome aboard, by the way. And thanks, panel. That's going to do it for this week's edition of the Lion Week in Review. Be sure to keep up to date on all the latest news each and every day at readlion.com. For all of us here at the Lion, thanks for downloading the show, and we'll see you next time.